One does not simply walk into Mordor. The land of shadow.
Welcome everybody. In today's Shadowcast, as promised, I want to look at the timeline of the Lord of the Rings of Power TV series. I want to look at what we know so far and what we might expect from the first season of the show. Before I begin though, I did want to make a note of the fact that Amazon can only use the content from either The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. They can only use the content from these two books. Now, luckily, The Lord of the Rings has the appendices, so inside of that is a lot of content about the Second Age. So that is the origin of the content that we're seeing thus far in the series. In terms of the trailers and other content that we've seen. All the parties involved that own the film, the TV, and the merchandising rights came together and sort of hammered out a deal with Amazon to make this series. So in this Shadowcast, I really want to see if we can nail down what we know so far about the timeline of the new series. So let's go ahead and fire up the Palantir and see if we can discover what's happening in the Second Age of Middle-earth in the Power of the Rings TV series. Oh yes, and before we start, I just wanted to make note of a new release, I think, that came through Entertainment Weekly, I believe. It is a photo, which you can see here, of Celebrimbor and the hammer used to forge the Rings of Power. I was very excited to see this. We've seen some quick images of Celebrimbor, but nothing detailed about the forging of the ring. So I was very excited to see Celebrimbor holding the hammer with which he will eventually forge the three elven rings, as well as the other rings, just not the one ring. But anyway, I had to make mention of that before we begin, because everything that we've seen thus far, we've seen very little about the forging of the Rings of Power. So I'm glad that they're beginning to release some content related to that. Okay, well, let's go ahead and begin.
For the elven kings, under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords, in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men, doomed to die. 1 for the Dark Lord, on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Amazon, Middle-earth Enterprises, Warner Brothers, and the Tolkien estate were the main corporate players involved in the making of this deal. MGM and Disney both had small portions of the rights, but were not the main players. In a later video, I would like to cover the full history of Tolkien's TV and movie rights. Neither the Silmarillion, the Children of Húrin, Beren and Luthien, The Fall of Gondolin, nor the 12 books in the History of Middle-earth series are legally part of this TV show. These books were edited and published by Christopher Tolkien after the film and TV rights to both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings had been sold. I must point out that the Amazon deal would likely never have happened while Christopher Tolkien was still in control of the family's properties. He was not a fan of the Jackson films and wanted nothing to do with film or television in relation to his father's writings. The good news is that The Lord of the Rings includes the appendices. They are brief, but they do cover content throughout the Second Age of Middle-earth. Now, let's take a look at the timeline of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power TV series. If we take all of the trailers and promotional releases together, we can draw some interesting conclusions. We know there will be scenes from the First Age, either in the form of a prologue or as flashbacks throughout the series. We know we will see the two trees of Valinor, and it looks as though we will see the fateful Oath of Fëanor with all of its terrible consequences. We also see the death of Galadriel's brother Finrod, who was captured by Sauron and killed during the First Age of Middle-earth. So we know that to some extent, the First Age of Middle-earth will be covered in the series. This surprised me since the appendices in The Lord of the Rings gives very little detail about the events of the First Age. Some of this seems to be sourced from the Silmarillion. However, it looks as though the series will treat the First Age much the way the three films by Peter Jackson prologued the Second Age before launching into the events of the Third Age in The Lord of the Rings. The main story, however, will be focused on the Second Age, which we know lasts for 3,441 years. A lot of time to cover. The very name of the series tells us that the 16 rings of power and their making will be the primary focus of the show. What's odd is that so far we have seen very little or nothing at all about the forging of the rings and the characters and events involved in their making. We have seen the introduction of many characters, both known and new. The trailers have focused on two things primarily: the awakening of the evil in Middle-earth and the first stages in the fall of Numenor. However, the rise of Sauron, the forging of the Rings of Power, took place nearly 1,500 years before the events shown in the trailers. Sauron seduced the elves and made the One Ring of Power in the year 1600 of the Second Age. The destruction of Numenor and the founding of Gondor in Middle-earth, on the other hand, occurs in the years 3,319 of the Second Age. That's 1,719 years apart. It's possible that Amazon is compressing the timeline of the First Age to bring all of these story threads together into one narrative time frame. Or they intend to focus on the first season with the fall of Numenor, and then perhaps flash back 1,700 years and tell the story of the Rings of Power in Season 2. However, if they were bringing all of these story threads together into a compressed timeline, I feel that we ought to have seen something more of Celebrimbor, Sauron as Anatar, the founding of Eregion, and the discovery of Mordor and Mount Doom. What I don't understand is why they're not telling the story of the rings first, and then letting the other events follow as they do in the book. It is possible that they're holding back this part of the story to keep some surprises for the series. I do hope that the story of the forging of the rings does not come after the fall of Numenor or at the same time frame, because that would totally trash Tolkien's timeline of the Second Age. The making of the rings needs to come before the events we see happening in the trailers for Tolkien's story to make sense. To be honest, there's a lot we don't know at this point. I am hoping, however, that the ending of the series will be with the battle of the last alliance of men and elves and the fall of Sauron. It would seem the perfect conclusion to the show. However, if the TV show is successful, they may take the series into the Third Age and chronicle the second rise of Sauron. Imagine seeing the wars of the Witch King of Angmar and the fall of the Northern Kingdom of Arnor. So, in conclusion, it looks to me like the rise of Sauron and the beginning stages of the fall of Numenor will play a central role in the first season of the show. Of course, until the show airs, we can't know any of this for sure. We're just guessing based on the content that we've seen thus far and the promotional material that's been thrown out there for fans. I hope you guys enjoyed this video taking a look at the timeline of the new series, and let me know in the comments section below if there is any content that you want me to cover in relationship to the new Rings of Power TV series. In the next video, I'm going to be focusing on a lore video, and that focus will be on Sauron choosing the land of Mordor in the Second Age as his fortress to launch his attacks upon Middle-earth. And also the choosing of Orodruin, or Mount Doom, as the place to forge the One Ring of Power. So until next time, fire up a torch and explore the black tunnels beneath Cirith Ungol, and I will see you along the mountains of shadow.